You wake up in the morning and you are hypervigilant. You are looking for a threat. You are on guard. You are on guard from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. That's hypervigilance. And it is not good for your mental health. It's not good for your relationships. And it provides no quality of life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Positivity Experience. And today it's all about understanding hypervigilance. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori. I want to give a huge shout out to all of our newest Patreon subscribers. And over on Patreon today, we're going to talk about prepping yourself to get out of that hypervigilance with a worksheet that's going to kind of help you start to understand what the underlying cause, not if there is, what the underlying cause may be. It may be something that can help if you take it to your doctor and stuff. So if you're on Patreon, you're going to get it. If you're new and you want to be on Patreon, you can either just go to the show description, any of the notes on anywhere that you're listening to this and click it, or you can go to patreon.com/the positivity experience with an X. And hypervigilance is a big one. It was something that I lived in high alert for, oh my God, so long. And it really doesn't afford good relationships. You're always looking for the shoe to drop. You're always looking for somebody's angle. It goes into a little level of paranoia. I mean, it is like a whole on thing. And it really, really can put you right on. It can sideline you. And it absolutely sidelined me multiple times. And so now there's reasons for it, right? Like you can have, it's been mostly associated with PTSD. So if you have CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, or if you have anxiety disorders, if you are sleep deprived, oh my God, I just recently had my own bout with that. Sleep deprivation can do a lot of things. Your sleep is impeccable. I mean, so impeccable to your mental health that when you're not getting adequate sleep, it's just the chicken and the egg. It is just, you are off to the races one way or another. Obviously, anxiety, it's been associated with schizophrenia, fibromyalgia, hypothyroidism. So it's not all just based in mental, but these are just, and by the way, that's just a few of the issues that causes that hypervigilance. And when we're talking about hypervigilance, it's exactly what I just said in kind of like in the beginning of the podcast, is where you're just looking. Like your brain goes, there is always a perceived threat. Like it's there, whether it's real or not. I mean, obviously, I see it a lot. I have Vietnam veteran clients and, so of course they have PTSD because it was like these unexpected things that were happening. And we've worked on understanding that not everything in the world is going to be based in a threat. And so it's going to come with a treatment. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but I want to give you a good indication as to like, what is it? Like, okay. So again, I think for those of you who are hypervigilant, who's always looking at the glass half empty, always looking for that shoe to drop, always knowing that there's an angle, it is called attentional bias. Okay. So you guys know I studied the brain, different parts of the brain, and we're going to talk about your amygdala because when you're in hypervigilance, the part of your brain that's affected is your amygdala. But I really want to talk to you about these attentional biases. Oh my God, attentional biases. And you'll see it a lot. Something as simple as attentional bias is you're sitting in a coffee shop. Okay. And you're sitting in a coffee shop, you're reading a book. When you walked in the coffee shop, there were like 50 people in there. You didn't take a nap. You didn't do anything. You just sat there and just kept reading your book and you just happen to glance around and you go, oh my God, there's like 3 people in here. Well, your attention wasn't on that. So wherever your attention is it's where your attentional bias is going to go. So if you are in anxiety, right? And if you're always looking at the glass to be half empty, you're only going to see those things that are half empty. You're not going to see the things that potentially could be positive. Another example of an attentional bias, right? Now that's, I want you to think of this. I think I've said this to you before. If I told you 99 amazing things and one thing or 100 amazing things and one thing in the middle of those was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess that's okay. You probably could have done that a little different. But then I just keep talking about all these amazing things. You're not even focusing on that. You're looking at that one negative thing. That thing that you took as negative. And remember, how you perceive something is how you see something. Right? So if you perceive the world, if your attentional bias says the world sucks, everything is horrible, then that's all you're going to see. Your attentional bias is going to go to that. So now let's kind of put those two things together. So you have all your attention going to whatever this negative is, right? You're choosing, it's an attentional bias. So it's just a bias of something. So you're going into, everything is negative. You're going into how you never have friends, this all or nothing thinking. You never have friends. Nobody wants to spend time with you. And then now in your mind, if you are going through anxiety, you're going through general anxiety, you're feeling insecure, you haven't healed your trauma, and you go, nobody wants to spend time with me. Like, I don't have any friends. And then you ask somebody, hey, do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to go see a movie? Do you want to go ice skating? And they go, no. You immediately go, of course not. Because nobody wants to spend time with me. Somehow or another, this has something to do with me. And that's how you see it. And no one can actually convince you otherwise if that's what you're choosing to see. So this is why anxiety is a big piece of it. And like I said, in my world, when I was dealing with so much of this, hypervigilance. I mean, I was getting up in the morning, all but putting on my little superhero suit and ready to take on the day. Ready to go into battle. I'm still finishing up my book, and, I used to fight all the time because it gave me an outlet. I didn't say it was a healthy coping strategy, but fighting was like, oh, I've got this power. I got this adrenaline, and I needed to do that to prevent somebody from getting over on me, right? You end a relationship because you don't want somebody else to have control to end the relationship because 5 relationships that you just had ended that way. That is going into hypervigilance. And sure, some of this, by the way, is our critter brain in that amygdala, right? That's your amygdala, part of your brain. Let me remove your little forehead. Let's go through your little frontal cortex and down here a little bit, and you're going to find your amygdala. And different parts of your brain control different things. And when you feel threatened, whether it's perceived or real, going back to attentional biases, if you automatically assume that something is negative, your attentional bias is going to go, oh my God, we better be prepared. Like, we better be prepared. And then you start projecting your own autobiography onto other people, and it becomes problematic in relationships. This is where you're like, well, I know you're doing something dirty. I know, and I'm ready for it. Okay, well, now you just accuse somebody of something. Now your relationship with them sucks because this is what's happening, because you're looking at it and you think that you're doing yourself a favor. You are not protecting yourself by being hypervigilant all the time. You are not. Now, our ancestors, right? Our little critter brain, our monkey brain, our lizard brain, survivor brain, however you want to say it, says, yeah, you know what? If we go out and we forage for food, we have to battle these T-Rexes. You better keep your head on a swivel. You better run from here to there as fast as you can because you are in danger. That's a real threat. The problem is especially when you have PTSD, you assume that that threat is there even if it's not an accurate threat, right? That's just how your brain works, right? You kind of perceive it that way. And this is why exposure therapy was the key to my life, right? Because a lot of times when you have PTSD, you're avoiding those things. You're avoiding the stimuli. You're avoiding the arousal. In turn, breathing more life into that fear. So when I went through my own exposure with the molestation, with living in a van, with, all of those things that were so uncertain from day to day. Yes. I mean, think about what that feels like. Like, you are always on guard because you kind of have to be. The problem is if you keep avoiding dealing with it because it's too hard for you and it hurts you and it's scary, then it's going to continue to control everything in your life. Right? So your hypervigilance, where you think that you're in control of everything, you are isolating yourself from having a good life. That is no quality of life. When you're living in hypervigilance, you don't have a quality of life. See, think about that. Think about, you get up every day, you wake up, oh boy, what's going to go down today? I better get ready because I know, man, work's going to be a nightmare. I got to deal with this traffic. Then I'm going to come home. Then I got to deal with these stupid kids who are going to be pissed off because of the school thing. Oh my God, you have already started to prepare yourself for a day that has not even happened. And I don't care if it's happened the last 9 days in a row, give yourself the opportunity, and it's your mindset that is going to help that. Now, of course, when you're dealing with PTSD, you're dealing with anxiety, depression, schizophrenia is part of this, dementia is another piece of it. When you're dealing with this, I'm going to need you to not have attentional bias with not taking medication. This is hurting you. I learned holistic medicine. I studied holistic medicine. I highly believe in both Eastern and Western practices. I absolutely believe in mindfulness and meditation. It saved my life, as well as pharmaceuticals. In many ways, those saved my life. The problem you have is that you go onto Google, stay off of there. Stay off of there. Stay off of there. Unless you're looking for directions or how to do something. Stay off of your Google. Okay? Because what happens is attentional bias says, I'm going to see why I can't take this SSRI. Look at all these side effects. Okay, but what are you looking at what the benefits versus the risk would be? Because if you're waking up every day and you feel like you're coming out of your skin and you're ready to jump out of your skin and you can't trust people and now you're paranoid and you are miserable and you can say, well, I don't want to take medicine. Well, that's a you issue. This is all on you, babe. This is all on you. You have got to ask yourself, do you really want to feel better? And because no, medicine, by the way, is not the answer. Therapy is not the answer. Meditation's the answer. I mean, it's definitely a big piece. That should be like a huge foundation. Mindfulness and meditation has to be the foundation. Self-love has to be the building block. And everything on top of that is a tool in your toolbox. What the medicine does is the medicine helps you slow down just a minute so you can actually do the cognitive work that you need to do. But you can't sit there and say, I don't want to take medicine, and then say I'm miserable in the same token. People are not going to want to talk to you. Because if you keep complaining about something and an opportunity and a tool is there and you're choosing to not take it, people are not going to want to listen to you. And you really can't blame them. And trust me, I've been on the other end of it. So before you go, well, you haven't been I have been on the other end of it. I was that person. And it's isolating. And then you get mad at people. Well, what do you mean? You just want me to take a pill? That's not going to fix everything. Now you're defensive. Now you're in hyper awareness that you assume that everybody thinks you're crazy because you take medication. What? So now you go into hypervigilance based on everybody else. So it isn't just, because you're looking at it as a threat in general. And that's where you have to be really careful. And that's why avoiding those situations are not really going to help you. You're going to have to process them. That's also when you have PTSD. First of all, everybody has intrusive thoughts. Everybody will have an intrusive thought. You're driving down the road. What if I drive off the bridge? They're just intrusive thoughts. They could be homicidal. They could be harmful. They're just a thought. Don't breathe life into them. Now, when you have PTSD, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have some other things. They are heightened. They do ramp up more. But they're just thoughts. Your thoughts and feelings are not a fact. Your thought is just a thought, and your feelings are waves, right? Things that are, if I say the sun is shining and it's literally shining, you can be like, well, I don't like it. It's so sunny. Doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is it's sunny. You're attaching I hate it. You're attaching that emotion to it. But then if it's cloudy tomorrow, your emotions are different. So you have to remember that when you're in this, a thought is literally just a passing thought. And a little fun fact on intrusive thoughts for you. Typically, those thoughts that you're having, you're not going to do them in real life. That's the beautiful thing. Because if you sit there and go, oh my God, am I a psychopath? I promise you, typically, if you're a psychopath, you're not going to wonder if you're a psychopath. You're not going to think you're not going to be like, oh my God, am I a narcissist? Everybody carries a certain level of narcissism, and there are some healthy sides of narcissism as well. But if you're constantly sitting in a space of going, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm having these intrusive thoughts. That's creating anxiety. Anxiety is creating lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is creating more deterioration for your cognitive function. That's causing more attentional bias. That's causing more hypervigilance. Do you see the domino effect here? And this is so, so important. And with that becomes anger and irritability. Now you're walking around angry at everything. You're walking around angry because you're ready for the battle. You have now assumed that you are a mind reader, that you know that somebody really doesn't want to spend time with you. It is you. They just don't like you anymore. They don't like me. They're intentionally not spending time with me. No, that's a you thing. Now we go into paranoia. Now that paranoia kicks in, which again goes into hypervigilance. You assume you're forgetting people all have lives outside of you. People have lives outside of me and you, and you're not going to be their top priority. And that is perfectly okay. And then you have to be really careful too of just looking at everything as half empty. You start looking at the world. Listen, I don't care where you're listening to this podcast right now, which by the way, thank you, because I know you guys listen to this in other countries and I love you so, so much. Hello to all of my lovely people in London. But you could look and go, my God, all I see is the negative. Again, it's attentional bias. Are there negative things that happen? Does it look like they're happening all the time? I'm going to tell you right now, you're more aware of them now. There's more access to them. I was just literally thinking about this thing. I don't want to talk to you about it because I haven't finished writing it in the book yet. But I've never really had, early on, I was never subjected to anything positive when it comes to sex. It was always negative. It was always a level of very inappropriate things, inappropriate viewing of magazines, different. And I don't just mean Playboy. I'm talking like illegal things that should have never been there. But it's irrelevant. You'll read about it if you get the book. But, so you could look and say, everything I see is negative. Well, why do you think I don't scroll socials? I don't scroll more than 5 to 7 minutes anymore. Now, I'll go on to Pinterest or I'll go on to TikTok to look at a recipe or look at something on my Instagram feed. I follow a lot of these beautiful places that are like vacation places and how I want my house to look. That's not scrolling. That's going and looking at things and feeling comfortable and getting ideas. That's great. I have no desire to sit there and scroll and then get irritated because I'm doom scrolling because all I'm seeing is negative. And now I look at the world and go, the world sucks because all I can see is all this negative stuff. Yes. Why do bad things happen to good people? I cannot give you that answer. I can't. I mean, I can tell you that it's part of life's journey. Why is it certain? I don't know. But if I beat myself up about it and I try to figure it out with everybody, that's going to be even more problematic. Now I'm going to feel crazy because I don't understand it, which is why you got to be careful of trying to figure out everybody else's why, right? So think about what this hypervigilance is doing. You think that you are protecting yourself and you are not. I mean, sure, it's 11 o'clock at night. You're walking from the store. Be a little vigilant, right? That's what we're going to talk about over on the Patreon is healthy levels of vigilance, right? And yes, of course, you can't just be head in the sand and pretend like nothing happens. Of course not. But the hypervigilance is what we're talking about here. That's what is really triggering all of these negative ways of seeing life. And everything you see is people sketchy and life is sketchy and you're not going to succeed. And my God, that's exhausting. It's like, now, I will tell you with borderline personality, yes, it's attributed to that. Like I said, it's attributed to a lot of reasons, right? There's a lot of reasons for it, medically, mentally. But just because you have it doesn't mean that you have to. It is absolutely treatable, by the way. But are you willing to do the work? Cognitive therapy, coaching, exposure therapy, probably medication, consistency, doing your 5 journals, doing your work, doing these things even when you don't want to do it, showing up for yourself every single day. When it's easy, it's easy. It's how you're showing up for yourself when it's harder. That's what's going to matter. Knowing that it's not just a fast process, knowing that this may take years or decades, knowing that you didn't get here overnight, knowing that you will slide backwards, knowing that you will have triggers that surface that you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was a trigger. But you got to be open and you got to be like ready for it. And avoiding situations are not always going to be it. And assuming that you know what people are thinking and saying, you got to be really careful of that. Because the hypervigilance is becoming really problematic. Now, sleep is important. Oh my God, sleep is important. I just recently was talking about this on one of my short form videos. I think I even talked about it. Yeah, I did. I talked about it here on YouTube where I talked about how, in the springtime, there's cycles for springtime. Yeah. If you have a mood disorder, springtime can be very triggering. I know it seems weird. I know you think it's just winter. Springtime can be big time for it. And it is for me. It's like where I go more into my insomnia, more of a little past hypomania. So then I add in my Klonopin. I add in more of my Cheech and Chong. I do more of my meditative stuff, because if I'm not sleeping more than a couple days, it is going to send me into a spiral. I know this about myself. So I make sure, and I didn't do it this time, not as quick as I would have and probably would have and will in the future for the next spring, is when I start feeling it coming on, and you got to know yourself, know your body, know how it feels. I will immediately start doing my Klonopin, because the sleep has to happen, right? Now, I am a mindful expert. I am literally like 8 days away from 95,000 hours, which is almost 15 years, of teaching and practicing mindfulness, right? Mindfulness will save your life. Will mindfulness fix the world? No, nothing's going to fix the world. Mindfulness, however, will stop making you sit there on alert and going, what if this happens? I better be prepared. I better be prepared for this. Oh my God. Well, you're not present. You're not even remotely staying present. You're like, yeah, I'm going to prepare for this. No, you're not here. You could get hit by a bus today. You could get hit by a bus. All this prep work you're doing for next week, you could get smushed by a bus, and none of that matters, right? And you might be able to not get smushed by a bus if you pay attention to where you're going and not worry about next week. But you gotta be willing to let go of thinking that you are in control of that, because you're really not, and the thing is your relationships will suffer from this of all sorts. Your friendships, so definitely the one with yourself, because then you're like, I can't trust myself. What if I mess up? Well, good. See, you're missing the whole factor that when you screw up, it's still working out for you. So before you go, well, what if it doesn't work out? No, it will always work out. It's just, will it work out as you planned, or will it work out on the way of learning? But it's always going to work out, right? Your actions will always work out. It's you either learning. Yeah, you might screw up a little bit. That's fine. You're learning stuff. You're learning more stuff about it. Right? You're learning more things about you. And so that's why when you're sitting in hypervigilance, think how exhausting that is. And again, it's this weird chicken and the egg thing. Something happens, you wake up a little hypervigilant, big time for anxiety. You're on guard. Now you start overthinking it. Now, again, you start have attentional biases to negativity. Now all you can see is negative stuff. Now you're like, look at me. See, I proved my point. You also breathe life right into that. You manifested it right into your pocket. And then you're laying in bed going, oh my God, it's 2:00. Oh my God, it's 5:00. This is why you do not stay in bed after 20 minutes. You do not stay in bed after 20 minutes of not being able to sleep. And you do not, the last thing you do is grab your cell phone. Stop it. Your social media is not that deep. It is not that deep. I promise you, it is not that important. And I've said this before, other than a few people and a handful of people at each one of these places who do care about mental health, the app itself does not. The app itself is there to make money and to keep retention. It is up to you to not do that, and stop avoiding yourself thinking that you're preparing yourself. Don't avoid a relationship because it's safe to not be in a relationship. Then you go, I'm lonely. I mean, I want a relationship. I don't really trust people, but I want a relationship. I mean, I do. And then you throw in attachment styles in there. If you have anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or disorganized attachment, now you're all over the place. You got anxiety. You want this relationship. You don't want the relationship. You want to know what's going on. Oh, the person's out to get you. That's exhausting. That's draining, right? So can it cause exhaustion? Absolutely. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Stress can absolutely cause exhaustion. That's basically, essentially, you go down, there's a few more other things, and then now you're in a nervous breakdown because you're trying so hard to control a narrative that you can only control your response. And so, don't beat yourself up because you have PTSD. Don't beat yourself up because you have anxiety or schizophrenia or BPD or dementia or hyperthyroidism or fibromyalgia. These are not things that you use as an excuse. They are reasons. So yes, you have PTSD, you have anxiety. Yeah, you're probably going to have a little bit more intrusive thoughts. This does not mean you're crazy. This does not mean you are a psychopath. This just means, oh, okay, I still have to do more of my mindfulness. Be committed to doing the work. But now you got to ask yourself, full on ask yourself this question. Am I really ready to do the work? No, not are you ready to feel better? Are you ready to do the work? Are you ready to be vulnerable? Are you ready to expose yourself? Are you ready to be honest with yourself? Because behind closed doors, you could tell people you're doing the 5 journals. You could tell people that you're meal prepping. You could tell people that you're doing these things and not doing any of it. You're not hurting anybody. No one cares if you make your goals or you don't. So are you willing to show up for yourself? Are you willing to do it when you don't feel like it? Are you willing to move your body? Are you willing to go outside and get some fresh air? Are you willing to go for a walk in nature because it is one of the best things you can do in your life? Are you willing to take the 10, 15-minute walk because it adds years to the longevity of your life? Are you willing to do it when you don't want to do it? Are you willing to expose yourself to the things that you are uncomfortable with? Are you willing to possibly take the medication? Listen, you're going to be the one to make that decision. So don't say you want to feel better and then go, I want to feel better the way I want to feel better. We've already been there. It didn't work that way. And especially when you're dealing with something like PTSD or anxiety or depression or schizophrenia or BPD, there are treatment. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. Put down Google. Stop listening to what your family says when they say, I don't believe in therapy. I don't believe in medicine. Well, then you don't go to therapy and you don't take medicine. And they don't need to know everything that you're doing. But walking around constantly being on guard, got your walls up, you're ready for battle at every given time. As a person who lived that way for countless years through my teenage years and early 20s, I can promise you it does not serve you. It is deteriorating your mental health. It is deteriorating your quality of life. It is deteriorating your relationships. It is causing codependency. It is causing attachment issues. It is causing so many things. And no, again, we know your trauma, your anxiety, your depression. It's not your fault. You didn't ask for that, but you're here now. It's what you do with it now. It's being okay to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try this relationship. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it still works because then, hey, I opened up. I know I'm able to open up again. I know what I'm going to look for differently next time. Cool. But I'm not going to sit there and just be paranoid. Right? And again, there are healthy ways to have vigilance, which we're going to talk about over on Patreon. So there are healthy, vigilant ways to have, but it's when it's so problematic and it is railroading your life. When it is sidelining you, when you are sidelined, when it is disrupting everything in your life, when you are afraid to leave the house, when you are afraid to have friends, when you are assuming that everyone is out to get you, when you are assuming that anytime something good happens, it's only temporary because something negative is going to fall. Now we're talking about you being in hypervigilance. No, it is not serving you. It is hampering you. There is zero quality of life there. So know the reasons. Yes, especially in PTSD, when there is trauma, when there is, when you have the heightened stimuli, when you're doing those things. Yes, of course it's going to be there. Be empathetic to yourself. Have empathy for yourself. You have got to have self-compassion. Don't sit there and be compassionate for everybody else on the planet and then drag yourself through the mud. That's being a hypocrite. That means you're not really all as compassionate to other people like you think you are. Because if you're not compassionate with yourself first and foremost, everybody else is secondary. And until you can accept that you are the priority and you are the only person who needs to show up for you to fix, I hate that word, but to fix this, I like to say work through it, but a lot of people like the word fix, to fix it. And not saying you have to do it by yourself, but don't expect everyone to be your cheerleader that's in your life to understand it. You may have to isolate just a bit to go through this on your own. Yes, it's always great to have a support system, but you don't need it. Don't sit there and bank on it and wait on it in order to do your healing. You're just hurting yourself more than you are anything else. So I want you to realize, put down the sword, baby. Take a deep breath. Come on. Come on. It's okay. Literally, it's all right. It literally is okay. You've been carrying the world on your shoulders for a long time. Breathe. It's all right. Put the sword down. Sit down. And ask yourself, how much are you willing to really show up for yourself? How much do you love yourself in order to show up for yourself? Check it out.